I get it, there are a ton of huge screen monitors on the market that look amazing in the pictures, but when you finally set them up at home, they turn out to be a disappointment. The glare, the lag, the lack of real depth, those little things that only show up after you've already spent the money. That's why I'm doing this deep dive before you click buy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The NEC V652 is a 65-inch LED LCD panel that promises a full HD 19201080 picture, 8 milliseconds response time, and built-in stereo speakers. At first glance, those numbers look decent, but the real question is, does that size and those specs actually work for a typical living room setup, a home office, or a casual gaming station? I've spent the last week testing it in a few different scenarios, and I want to walk you through what I found so you can decide if it fits your needs or if you're better off looking elsewhere. First off, let's talk about the sheer size. A 65-inch screen is normally something you see on a TV, not a computer monitor. Because of that, the viewing distance becomes a critical factor. In my living room, where the couch sits about 810 feet away, the picture feels immersive without any pixelation. The 1080p resolution holds up surprisingly well at that distance, the image isn't grainy, and the 16.7 million colors keep the visuals looking natural, especially for movies and TV shows. If you're the type who likes to sit closer, say at a desk just a few feet away, the pixel density drops noticeably. Text starts to look a bit soft, and you'll begin to notice the individual pixels on the edges of the screen. That's something you have to decide up front. Do you have a space that lets you sit far enough away to enjoy a true 65-inch experience? The next thing I checked was the contrast ratio. NEC lists a 4:0:0:1 contrast, which is respectable for an LED panel in this price range. In a dimly lit room, blacks are fairly deep and the whites stay bright without washing out. However, the panel's peak brightness is 320 nits, which isn't enough to combat direct sunlight. If you plan to mount this on a wall that faces a window, you'll find the picture washed out during the day, even with the room's curtains drawn. For a typical home theater or a dedicated media room where you can control the lighting, the contrast and brightness work well together, delivering a decent HDR-like punch for standard content. Now, the built-in speakers. NEC includes a pair of 3-watt speakers that are surprisingly usable for a monitor of this size. In a small room, they can fill the space with clear dialogue and enough bass to make movie soundtracks feel present. I tested them with a Netflix documentary and a fast-paced action film. The speakers handled both without distortion. That said, they're not a substitute for a proper sound system if you're an audiophile or if you want immersive surround sound for gaming. The speakers lack a dedicated subwoofer channel, so low-frequency effects feel more like a hint than a full-bodied rumble. If you already have a soundbar or a set of bookshelf speakers, you'll probably ignore the built-ins altogether, which is fine because the monitor's audio output is just a convenient fallback. Connectivity is where the V652 feels surprisingly flexible. It comes with HDMI, DVI, and VGA ports, so you can hook it up to a modern laptop, a desktop PC, or even an older console without needing adapters. The HDMI port supports 1080p at 60 Hz, which is standard for most media playback and casual gaming. I used the HDMI connection with my PlayStation 4, and the input lag was low enough that I didn't notice any lag in platformer games. The DVI port gave me a clean signal from my workstation, and I appreciated that the monitor still offers a VGA option for legacy devices. The only downside is the lack of a USB-C input, which is becoming a common way to connect newer laptops with a single cable for video, data, and power. If you rely on a USB-C dock, you'll need an extra adapter, which adds a tiny bit of clutter. One of the practical concerns many buyers overlook is the stand and mounting options. The V652 ships with a fairly sturdy stand that can tilt a few degrees, but it's not designed for height adjustment. In my test, the stand positioned the screen a little low for a couch setup, so I ended up mounting it on a wall using a VSA-compatible bracket. The monitor's back has a standard 100,100mm VESA pattern, making the wall mount process straightforward. However, the panel is heavy about 30 pounds, so you'll need a wall that can support that weight, or you'll have to brace the stand with a sturdy desk. If you're planning a tabletop setup, be aware that the stand's footprint is quite large, and you'll need enough desk space to accommodate it comfortably. From a reliability standpoint, NEC backs the V652 with a 3-year warranty, which,